Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We're going to switch up the order a little bit here because today is the first Shabbat school, and when there is Shabbat school at the religious school, I am blessed to be able to lead them different grades in their Shabbat services, which start at 11 o'clock. So you get to hear me speak now so that I can go lead their services at 11. So Shabbat Shalom, nice to be together. I want to speak a little bit about the Akedah, which has nothing to do with our Torah reading today, but it comes up many, many times in our Yamim Noraim, in our high holiday liturgy. We read it straight from the Torah on the second day of Rosh Hashanah. This story of Avraham almost sacrificing his son, and for many, many years, I think until this year, I thought of it as this story that could never happen to us, but I thought a little more deeply this year. Throughout in different parts of the Rosh Hashanah liturgy, we pray that God grant us the same mercy that God granted Avraham when he put his son on the altar, that we receive the mercy of God so that we don't ultimately sacrifice. And then on Kol Nidre night, one of my favorite piyutim, Misha'ana, we pray Misha'ana LaAvraham Avinu Behar Moriah, asking that God, who answered our father Abraham on Mount Moriah, also answer us on Kol Nidre this night before the gates closed, again with the same mercy that God granted Abraham. So in this story of the Akedah, as we have it, and also in the way that it comes up in all of our liturgy, God intervenes with mercy. But there's always this question, to me a pretty heavy question, which is, what if Abraham hadn't stopped? What would it mean for us in our covenant with God if our covenant was actually built on sacrifice and not on the idea of mercy? And then further, it's true that our covenant is built on this mercy of God between us and God and between Abraham and God, but it's also true that there are large parts of our humanity today, both individually and collectively, that we sacrifice, sometimes knowingly and sometimes unknowingly. We sacrifice when we send our brothers and sisters to war. We sacrifice when our children, God forbid, knock on wood, when children in our country become victims of gun violence, when poverty and homelessness and food insecurity are left unaddressed in our own backyards. And so I was reading about the Akedah from one of my teachers, Rabbi Tali Adler, who said, when God stops Abraham from killing his son, he's not just saving Yitzchak, he's offering us another way. He's offering an enduring testimony that the world does not need to be lubricated with human blood in order to invite God's blessings. I'm going to read that again because it's really what I want us to think about today. When God stops Abraham from killing his son, he's not just saving Yitzchak, he's offering us all another way. He's offering an enduring testimony that the world does not need to be lubricated with human blood to invite God's blessings. And our sages echo this idea in various midrashim. The rabbis tell us that when Abraham returned from Mount Moriah, he discovered that Sarah had died, not from old age, but from the shock of learning what had happened to her son. And in linking Sarah's death to the Akedah, our tradition reminds us that some sacrifices leave scars that exist long, long after the moment has passed. And today, when we sacrifice lives through war or systemic neglect or worse, we too leave behind the remnants of Sarah, of grieving mothers, of shattered families, of communities torn apart. And so we're here today. We've read the story of the Akedah on Rosh Hashanah. We've prayed to be granted the same mercy, and we will continue to pray to be granted the same mercy. And I know what I want us to think about this Shabbat Shuvah is how can we heed the call of the Akedah? How can we listen to God's command to spare the child like Abraham spared Yitzchak? I want to give us one paradigm that is in the form of Jewish feminine prayer. Jewish women throughout history have shown us one way. There's this rich history of women who spoke Yiddish who would write their own personal devotional prayers called tchines. These were prayers that they wrote while they were lighting candles, and they were created by and for women. And I was reading through a lot of these this week because there's a lot of themes of the Akedah that show up in these prayers. They transform the Akedah from a story about individual sacrifice into a call for collective protection. So one of these prayers that they specifically wrote to read while lighting candles for Yom Kippur said that through the merit of our mother Sarah, may God remember us for the merit of her pain when her beloved son Isaac was led to binding. And in this, they weren't just asking for divine protection, they were figuring out a way within their scope of power to make a change in their own world. These tchines, these prayers, were written to build coalitions of biblical advocates. For every week, for every candle that they lit, their wicks represented a different cause. Some of these would be protection from widowhood, or protection for their children's education, or economic safety, or safety from violence. These women understood that when they prayed that they should not be left widows this year, or that our children should not be taken away from our world in our lifetime, they weren't advocating just for themselves and for the needs of their own family, but for a systemic change that would protect all families beyond just the small impact of the light that shed from their windows. These women understood something that we can still learn, that prayer and organizing people together, they're not separate activities. They're both ways of building relationships and power needed to protect our lives. So this Shabbat Tshuva, is about tshuva, or one translation of that is return. And not just our individual return, though it's surely about our individual return, but it's also about our return together. The Akedah offers us a vision. Not this solitary father alone on the mountain, but maybe what about the people in the valley, listening and organizing and creating a world where no child can be bound upon an altar. This idea of tshuva is lofty and looming each year, that we need to figure out how we're going to make our small individual impact year after year. And so I'd like to suggest a paradigm this year for communal tshuva, an invitation to make communal tshuva a part of our 5786 year. And I've alluded to it a little bit, but I think that we can do this through doing some community organizing in our synagogue, through choosing local causes that could use our attention and our care, and most of all, our power. So where does community organizing begin? It begins with something that we as rabbis do for our full-time job, listening. Just as God listened to the cry of Sarah when she nearly lost her son, organizers start by hearing the pain and the hope in people's lives. Through one-on-one conversations or groups of conversations, we can uncover what matters most, the struggles that keep us up at night, and then the visions that call us forward. And oftentimes when we do these series of one-on-one conversations or meetings, we reveal patterns, concerns that no single person can solve alone. And then through that, we build relationships. The Akedah teaches us that the cost of sacrifice is never borne by one individual. Sarah, Isaac, and Abraham carry it, and we still carry it. Organizing recognizes the same truth. Our lives are inherently intertwined. We create covenantal relationships when we come together, and through our relationships, we can command trust and power that no solitary voice can command. And then we can turn to action. Our talking and our ideating and our prayer turns to collective pressure. And we can do this outside the walls of our sanctuary and outside the walls of our synagogue by inviting neighbors and meeting with officials and negotiating real change. And this is based on topics that we care about, whether it's housing or safety or access to food or more. But what makes this work holy is not the outcome, but it's the process of us doing a different sort of spiritual work together. Organizing transforms isolation into covenant. It insists that we can't do tshuva alone, that we must return and do tshuva together. Each step, listening, building, acting, it mirrors our spiritual work of tshuva, of hearing the truth, of mending relationships, and turning to a better path. And this is why Jewish communities have organized across generations. In the labor movements, in the civil rights struggle, in today's campaigns for justice, Jews have acted not only as citizens, but as bearers of Torah and of our tradition. We have known that to bind ourselves to one another is to honor God, to protect life in itself. It's a form of prayer. For many Jews, this includes me, organizing is a spiritual and religious practice, one that complements and strengthens prayer and Torah learning and community. Even if this practice is not one that enriches your spiritual life right now, I invite you to try it out, to see how organizing can complement and enrich your Jewish life. Throughout our community, there are many that care deeply about our outer world and the endless tshuva that can be done. And again, I'm not suggesting that this Shabbat tshuva, there's no personal or individual tshuva to be done. But along with our personal tshuva, we can think about the changes, the many changes that our world needs. So this year, let's try to bring some organizing work into our synagogue, to identify local issues that keep our neighbors up at night, to build coalitions that extend beyond these walls, and to turn prayers into the kind of collective action that can actually spare children from modern altars of neglect and violence. The Akedah doesn't end with Avram and Yitzchak walking down the mountain alone. It ends with us choosing covenant over sacrifice and choosing to organize our love into power. I want to offer a tachlis way to do this lofty ideal, which is that, I don't see them right now, but along with Rebecca Starr and Janet Bauman, I think neither of whom are in the room right now, we will be conducting series of one-on-ones and meetings in order to identify issues that within our synagogue we want to organize on together. So if you have something that really keeps you awake within the Wynwood community, within the larger Philadelphia community, you should reach out to one of us and we are happy to chat with you and we will start to build coalitions together. We will also be reaching out to you if we think that you're somebody who might be interested in doing some of this work with us. So again, I want to end with that we can choose to organize our love into power and together create more holiness and more spirituality in our spaces through also helping our outer world. Shabbat shalom, everyone. Let's get to work.